So it's really nice to now know that I can bring the people working together, because I'm actually realising that the people is number one in this journey. We really, to understand ourselves, break through our fears, because a lot of what we're doing on our farm is actually deep in ground fears that are holding us back and stopping the energy from flowing. And then to be able to bring in farming, to bring in nature, and if we can farm in a more natural way, then we are producing great food, which allows us to be healthy, and it becomes this one big cycle, which is really cool that it all come together.
The Biological Farming Roundtable podcast helps farmers explore innovative, low-input, regenerative and profitable farming systems. The Biological Farming Roundtable is sponsored by NutriSoil, an award-winning biological liquid fertiliser made from a big worm farm. NutriSoil's purpose is to empower farmers to produce life-enriching food. My name is Nicola Maddock. I work at NutriSoil. I envisage a future where farmers are rewarded for producing nutrient-rich foods and consumers have this easily available to them.
Hello, Robin. Welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Yeah, I'm going really well. Thank you for having me here today.
Wonderful. Well, it is our first podcast of 2023. So who better to have on the show is my good friend, Robin Tait. Hopefully I get some more podcasts done this year. I didn't quite get many done last year, but we've got a good lineup for this year. And I'm so glad that you are number one in the lineup.
Yeah, it's very exciting. And this is my very first podcast. So
okay.
Yeah.
Well, we've had many conversations, so let's just pretend we're having a good old chat, because that's all a podcast is.
Yeah, that sounds perfect. Thank you.
Awesome. So if I start off about the first time I heard about you, it was from Vic No-Till, a farmer-led organisation who's a really amazing organisation doing great things in regenerative agriculture. And they said, you've got to meet Robin Tait. And I think that must have been 2018 when you were finishing your Nuffield, but I might have met you in 2019. And now you're one of our key NutriSoil HUB advisors, but you always explain the independence to you is really important as an advisor. So, it's amazing the path that we have found together. And then there's also other things we've been working on. So tell us and our listeners a bit about the business that you have. What's it called and what do you do? I guess a day in the life of Robin Tait.
Well, I haven't actually settled on a business name as yet. I'm just Robin Tait Consulting, I suppose we'll say. And so I'm, very much important to me to be independent, and it has been my whole career. So I'm working as a consultant now with farmers around the education space of talking about soil and the whole ecosystem and the whole farm ecosystem, and also bringing in the component of people as well, because the people are so important in this regenerative space that we're in, because we need to be really confident within ourselves, because we're getting off the beaten path of agriculture. So we need to be, know what we're doing and be driven in the decision that we've made to change our farming.
Absolutely. I was just listening to a Tony Robbins thing just this morning. He's got this 5-day unshakable challenge, and it started at like 6 a.m. this morning. And one of the things that really resonated with me was, if you try and make change and you don't know your why, and you start with the how, so you just do what someone else has told you to do, or you do what someone else is doing, then it's not going to be a long-lasting change. And that's kind of what you're talking about with people, isn't it?
Yeah, that's exactly it. And one of the big lessons from my Nuffield was I went away probably just thinking about all the hows, like how you do this, how you do that. And then there was a big lesson in the middle of it that nothing matters about the how until you understand why and why you're doing it. So that's what I really like to bring into my work, is the why the soil works that way. Why do we need the soil to be covered? Why do we need diversity? And then that just helps people understand why they're doing it, and then the how can come from there. So
do you go even deeper than that? So that's the why of understanding the how. But what about their personal why? Like in terms of they want to be sustainable, they want to leave the land for their family, they want healthy food that's not chemical, laden with chemicals. Do you go even further than that with people?
Yeah, I do like to go further than that with people. It's sort of becoming more a part of my work. It hasn't been so much this last year, but it's definitely coming. I really like to delve into the why they're doing it and what the vision is for the farm, what they're trying to create, like that long-term vision, 100 years time, 200 years time. What do you want to look at, like when you're up, wherever you are, looking down at your farm, what do you want to see it looking like, and what is it doing and achieving? And I really try to bring that into the work as well. It's really important to set that why up at the start.
I love that you haven't just gone 5 years, you went 100 years.
Yeah. I think that's important, because we can go, yes, we do need to have our 5-year and our 10-year and our 20-year goal, but that real long-term vision gives you that reason for planting the trees and for setting your farm up in the way that you want it, rather than just having short-term sort of goals and achievements, which obviously we need small steps, but we also need that big vision, that big dream way out there that we're trying to achieve. So or the purpose, to bring the purpose into what we're doing every day.
Do you think that many farmers have that before you get to them, or is that a conversation that you kind of need to warm people up to? Is it easy to have that conversation?
Not with everybody. Some people, it feels like I've thrown them a real curveball, and when I ask that long-term vision, they've got that short-term vision is sort of there. And so, it is something that with some people it's just there straight away, and others it's where I'm working up to it. And so going, okay, well, what is it that we want to achieve on the farm? And so that we can, when days become tough, you've got your why there, what you're trying to work towards, and you can continue on through those days.
That's that really crucial moment, isn't it? Because you're looking over the fence, you're thinking someone's farm's bigger than mine, I'm not as important as them, someone's got more yield than me, I haven't been as successful as them. When we went to the Zach Bush event, you and me went to the Zach Bush event in Melbourne recently, and how amazing was that? He talked about othering, and he said we all do it. Why do we do it? So when we pass, none of that is going to matter. We can't take any of that with us. What in the world are we doing comparing ourselves to others all the time? What is it that we truly want? Yeah,
that's right. And I think that also comes back to learning to live in the present, like the present today, because we are always trying to compare ourselves to other people and go, oh, well, I'm not good enough. I'm the worst person at doing this, and comparing and saying, oh, I just need to learn more. I need to know more. How can I be out here consulting when I don't know enough? But we've just got to remember that we do know enough, and we are enough just being us. And that to stop comparing ourselves or looking over the fence is about being really, I suppose, complete, or understanding ourselves and saying that it is okay to be us, and it is okay that our farm is where our farm is, because that's where we are at the moment. And comparing doesn't do us any good. It doesn't get us forward, because we're sort of holding ourselves back because we're not actually looking to see what we've actually achieved on our farm. Like our blinkers can be on and not actually see what's actually happening on our farm.
It's an absolute glass ceiling, isn't it? I love that vulnerability, and I'll share with you, I feel exactly the same. I have those doubts, I have those feelings that I don't know enough about vermiculture, yet I know so much about vermiculture that others don't know, and I've got that to share. Thank you for that vulnerability. I think we will go there a bit further, but I've read your Nuffield Scholarship paper, and there was so much in that. Tell me about the double cropping in France and Belgium.
So in 2018, I actually travelled all over the world, talking to lots of different farmers, and then came back and did more around Australia. But in Belgium and France, so I went to this one farm who has been regenerative using the no-till methods for about 15 years. And he's, so one of the methods is to keep a living plant all year round, one of the principles. And he'd harvested spring barley, and then he'd planted buckwheat and winter wheat straight in after the spring barley. And then the buckwheat was going to get harvested later in the summer, and then the winter wheat was going to get harvested the following year. So it's a method of keeping a plant growing all year round, and also having 3 crops in 2 years basically, which was an amazing sort of production of that land, and using the principles of healthy soil. So yeah.
Do you see that being used in Australia?
Well, it's what I found, I suppose, was there's just so many different ideas out there, and often we get quite stuck in our box, and we can't think of anything different. So it's all ideas to bring back to Australia, and it might not be exactly used in that way that they've used it, but it can be tweaked to actually suit our system. So yeah, definitely, I think it can be used here in Australia. It's just depending on what your moisture levels are, your rainfall. Somewhere here like Tasmania, where we probably do a fair bit of, you would say, double cropping, because crops follow straight directly after, because we've got irrigation, which allows to change things a little bit. Yeah.
So it really takes it back to your climate, your soil, your fertility, what's actually going to suit that system.
Yeah.
So looking at someone else's system, you can take ideas, but copying it probably doesn't often work.
Yeah, that's right.
You took in potatoes, there was something in potatoes I saw where they were growing another crop with the potatoes.
So that was, I saw that in France and in Colorado at Brendan Rockies. So they're growing like legumes in with the potatoes, so peas, chickling vetch, chickpeas, in as a companion, and also help to bring in extra nitrogen for those potatoes. And it also provides a bridge for the insects to be able to get into the crop and actually spread their wings through the crop. So you've got your insect control, or your beneficial insects are living in your crop. It was just really interesting also, like where there was a miss with the potatoes, those companion plants had actually really taken over that space. So like in the wet areas, they were actually growing, they were able to take up the moisture, where across the potato paddock, when you looked across it, you could see very little peas, very little chickling vetch, and those potatoes being able to suppress the numbers. But where the potatoes didn't grow, they were growing and flourishing and enjoying their time. So it's just that by bringing in different plants into the crop allows each plant to thrive in the area that it likes, like, the different soil conditions, the wet or the dry, and yeah.
So I guess the crop was potato. That was what they were trying to harvest. That was their cash crop. Do you think that those other plants that had taken over in those areas had reduced the yield of the potatoes?
Well, the potatoes wouldn't have grown in that area anyway. So you would have just had a bare area. I mean, it was only small spaces. It wasn't massive spaces. So so there was no risk that it was hampering the yield of the potatoes. Like when I generally looked across the paddock, it just looked fully like a potato crop, just with a few flowers poking up here and there, which allowed the insects to get into the crop, like have bridges to fly through. So
yeah. You have to use a lot of fungicide on a traditional potato crop. Do you think that they could reduce the amount of chemical they use because of those additional species in there?
So they had really reduced the amount of number one, insecticide, and also the fungicide was reducing because leading up to their potatoes, they had a mixed cover crop for 2 years, which was grazed by cattle, bringing in, they didn't have to have the cattle, they brought in a rancher from and his cattle. So they're building up the resilience of that soil, then that plant is going in, the potato's going in, it's being planted with its companions. So there's diversity in that crop as well, which is bringing the health of the soil up, which meant that the plant, they were reducing their fungicide application.
Have you seen that used in Australia?
I haven't actually, but it's interesting. I've got a person here in Tassie that's trying it this year, planting buckwheat and peas with the potatoes. So it's going to be very exciting. I'm hanging out to see some photos of how that's actually working. So, yeah.
Brilliant. That's awesome. Okay, cover crops. If I called you any specialist, I would call you a cover crop specialist, I think. You really know your plants, you know how to put them together, you know why you're putting them together. Tell me what's your main reason for using cover crops and where are you using them in Tasmania?
Yeah, it's been really interesting. My career's I've been mainly in cropping production for most of my career. In the last couple of years, since my Nuffield, I've actually moved more into livestock. So the cover crop is so important in our cropping system, although it's been quite difficult to bring in the diversity because it's such a short-term crop, and we're trying to get our crops actually planted in, get ground ready in July, August, and then planting in that time when it's a really wet period in Tassie. So we don't want a whole lot of bulk and a whole lot of green material at that point in time. But yeah, to have our ground covered over that winter period so we're not losing lots of soil is really important. And then the cover crop in livestock production, we're using diversity in fodder crops to feed cattle or sheep during periods of low grass production, so winter fodder crops. And it also can act, a little bit like a sacrifice paddock. When the rest of the farm is wet, the cattle can come and be on this mixed fodder crop, and eating a diversity of food rather than we often just make our sheep or cattle eat like a forage brassica, and there's not a lot of fibre in there, and we have to have runoff paddocks. So being able to bring in the oats, the cereal rye, other plants with fibre in there with the brassica is helping the animals with their growth rates and actually just being a bit more happier on their forage crop.
That's interesting. There's a few things in that, but you said that when it's really wet, you can actually use that paddock compared to the other paddocks that don't have as much growth. So does it assist with the pugging? What is it?
I suppose the paddocks are still getting pugged up. It's a little bit of this catch-22. But when we do have diversity actually in our crops, we have diversity of roots, short and long, and the really long and medium ones. It actually allows the ground to carry a bit more weight in your animals. So it's becomes a living sponge, and they are able to, the soil's able to carry the cattle and sheep, any livestock that you've got. But when it becomes really wet, it would be best to get your animals off the soil. But the diversity is allowing actually that land to carry them for that little bit longer, where if you just had a grass with a short roots, you need to get the cattle off earlier.
It's nearly like a mattress. I think I've had it explained to me like a mattress, isn't it? So just that spring in there from those root systems.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like absolutely spring. And as it got explained to me, if you have anything living, it springs back into the form that it was. So if we squash our hand, that we can squash it, but when we unsquash it, it goes back to the form of a hand. So
my goodness. Yeah, I've never thought of it like that.
Yeah, so if we can create a living soil and we squash it, then it can come back to being what it was like. So like that spring. So it's really important, if we want our soil to be healthy and happy, that we keep it, do everything that keeps it to be a living organism so that it can keep its shape and keep supporting us.
How absolutely simple is that? and yet how powerful. I've never thought of it like that. That's amazing.
Yeah, it was just amazing when Rick explained that to me. I'm like, well, that just makes sense, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
Sometimes we just need a little demonstration or a little metaphor to make it a visualization, I suppose, to make it hit home, and you go, oh, okay, I get it. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's talk about those cover crops, how we plant them. So firstly, in the grazing scenario, is there anyone just sowing straight into their existing perennial pastures, or are they spraying it out first and preparing it? What's the general way that you're using these multi-species in grazing operations?
It all depends on what the goal is, what is the farm's vision, also where they're going. Some farms are still quite happy to be using chemical and spray out the crop and then work the ground. And others are just a blanket said that there's no more chemical to be applied on this farm. So the cold turkey method, or just gradually working our way in. So I have got some people, like what we'll do is we'll eat the existing grass right down really hard, down to the boards. And then if need be, put a mulcher across it just to take it down even further, and then plant directly into it. There is a little bit of competition sort of tends to happen. You need to get your timing right and moisture, that sort of thing. And if it's, others, just a light disc across just to break up that grass turfy layer, and then sow into it, or full cultivation. It really depends, I think, on what values or what your vision for your farm is, where you're at in your farming, and the risk factor as well. Like if you really, really need that crop to grow, and probably cultivation is the best way. But then we know that cultivation is not great for our fungi, that affects our soil biology. So, and then sometimes when we're starting off paddocks, that we're just starting out the system in the transition to a more natural system. Starting from ground zero is okay. Sometimes we just need to reset our soil system, and if we have to if we have to cultivate to get that and get our diversity in, and comes back to the understanding the why. So we know that we've done damage, we've disturbed the soil, we've taken out diversity. So now, understanding the principles of healthy soil, we can go, okay, well, how do we help this soil repair as quick as we can? So getting those plants growing as quickly as possible, diversity of roots. If there's any biological inputs that we could be applying just to help to feed that biology so it can recover quickly.
So with your multi-species type of crops, you're not as much using synthetic fertilizer, it's more biological inputs?
Yeah. Once again, comes down to where you are in your farm. There are still some farms that I work with that put down a small amount of synthetic granular at the start of planting. There's others that are just purely using the biological, of course, coating our seed in NutriSoil, give that seed a good start. And then Tasmania doesn't really have liquid inject system set up. We've just got a contractor that's putting a liquid inject on his drill. So that's very exciting. We'll be able to put some compost extract and the worm extract down with the seed as well. So, and then mainly, try with our cover crops or forage crops, just using biological inputs to feed them through the system. Yeah.
I still want to talk about cropping and sowing and terminating, but something that I really picked up then is that everyone's got their different purpose, their different vision, their different why, yet you must have your own for the land, because I know how much you love land, and there must be a bit of a difficulty working with clients when you think, I really think that they should be doing this, but they're not ready to move themselves. So they just haven't, expanded to that next level of comfort of becoming regenerative, and they might be using some more controlling type of methods. How do you, I guess, personally deal with that?
It's a tricky one, because I've been through my own personal journey of transitioning from artificial to natural as well. And it's really, I suppose, meeting the person at where they're at. And for me, it was really hard at the start because it was all so new, so exciting. Like I just, traveled for the whole year, being immersed with all these soil carers from the world and understanding that the soil was alive. And when I came home from my Nuffield, it was really tricky because I just wanted everyone to get this. I'm like, can't you see that the soil is alive? And if we support it, it's going to support us. And it's just telling everyone and anybody and bashing my head against brick walls, trying to get people to understand. And so that was, for me, going from completely conventional, or not completely conventional mindset, I already had this underneath, but then to go to a quite natural sort of understanding. It's been a process for me to get to the point where it's like, okay, not everyone's seen what I've seen. They haven't been on the journey that I've been on, and their paradigms haven't been completely shifted. So now I have to be a bit more empathetic to where and understand where they are at and what they can actually see. And then just bring them slowly on the journey and feed the information that they need at that point in time to go through. And yeah, it's just being there on the journey with them. For me, it used to hurt so much, but now I'm understanding that I'm on my journey, they're on their journey, and it's about helping them to get to where they want to get to. And yeah, it's okay. I don't know how to explain that, but it's just, I've got to the point where I can accept that, that's where they're at, that's where I'm at. And it's, yes, okay, sometimes deep down it does hurt when we may need to use some chemical or high rates of fertilizer, but it's not about me projecting that onto the farmer. It's about going, well, this is okay, it's a transition. How do we reduce the impact that has on the natural ecosystem on the soil, and then going from there.
That makes me think, and we will talk about this later, but I just have to say now, the work that I know you work with Jane Slattery, who's a co-founder of Natural Intelligence Farming, and NutriSoil and the team do as well. And one of the biggest things that she has taught us is no judgments, no conditions. Everyone is where they are, and there's a reason for that, and that is okay. Yeah. And I think that's probably what you found.
Yeah, that's right, exactly. And it's, if we do go in with our judgments and our conditioning on how this person needs to be, then we don't get the best out of that person. Jane, I've been working very closely with Jane. It's been an amazing journey, but one farm visit, I was really worked up about it. I'm like, I don't want to go. I'm going to have to talk about chemicals. I don't want to work with farmers that are using chemical anymore. And it's very quite conventional, that sort of thing. But Jane's like, hang on a minute, you've already judged this person, you've already judged their land, you've already put your conditions on what it's going to be like. How about you just go with no judgment, no conditioning, and I was like, so with a blank mind. And so I did. I had to work my, driving up. I'm like, no, nothing. You don't know this person. It's just you're meeting them for the first time. And it turned into one of the most amazing farm visits. We had great conversations. I was able to be fully myself. I feel like they were able to be themselves as well and ask questions that they really wanted to ask. So it's just lessons that you have, and you start to understand if you do just meet the person where they're at and have put none of your preconceived judgments or ideas out on them or about them, how it just all flows so much better.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, it is.
Going back, so we don't want to stop talking about the cropping and the multi-species. How are they using the multi-species in cropping in terms of the sowing and the termination?
Yeah, It's funny that I feel like I've just moved so far away from the cropping in the last couple of years, but it's still there in me, and I'm still working with some people that are using the cover crops. So our Tasmanian conditions, or how our rotation is set up, it's quite different to other parts of Australia and the world. In my travels, I understood that Tasmania is actually very unique, and it's very important for us Tasmanians to get out of our island and see that things are actually quite different to how we work. But so we're like high vegetable production, intensive cropping. There's crops going in all the time, and the cover crop, because currently a lot of the drills that we have in the companies, we're quite controlled by companies and who you actually grow the vegetables for. They often supply the planting equipment and the harvest equipment. So our drills currently can't cope with any trash, any bit that's dragging on the surface. And we're also trying to plant really, really small seed that needs generally sometimes only 5 mil under the surface. So cover crops can be quite problematic in terms of how we deal with them coming into that planting season. Often, if we've grown something that's really tall, really diverse, sort of let it get a bit out of control, because also we don't, as croppers, we don't like to have livestock coming in onto our red dirt. So we've got nothing to take that bulk down. So there'll often be some ploughing, some mulching, all sorts of things that maybe aren't necessarily the best for our soil, but that's the way that we have to do it to deal with the bulk and deal with the drills that we're using. In saying that, there is a little bit of new thinking coming in. Strip till for broccoli, I mean, that's been around for quite a while. Being able to actually go into a little bit more bulk, you don't have to have a perfect seed bed. And there's some investigation with disc drills as well. So yeah,
it's a whole systems thing. It's not even the farmer making the decision there. It's the system of who's buying the food.
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing? I was talking to a cane farmer just yesterday, and the same thing for him. So he had found that his sweet spot was 80 units, 80 units of nitrogen. Normally a low level is 120, and people use a lot more. And he could get 80 to 90 tonnes and be profitable, but he wanted to get 90 to 100 tonnes and equal profit and use more synthetic fertilizer. And I was like, why? And he said, because of the harvester. If the harvester comes in and I don't have enough tonnage, they drive too fast and they rip the soil. And they all have to share the harvesters, they have to share the mills. So he actually, it wasn't as much as he wanted to lower his fertilizer, the system didn't really reward him for that.
Yeah, and that's the really tricky part about it, because we're so locked into the current system that's there, isn't really fully understanding or set up for us that want to start doing diverse crops, multi-species crops that we actually harvest and deliver. And I mean, in Tasmania, like pyrethrum is grown for a company, poppies is grown for a company, the onions are grown for a company, like potatoes, everything is grown for a company. And often a lot of that, the companies dictate how things need to be grown and how they're harvested and how they're planted. So it becomes really hard if you are actually trying to transition and change the way that your soil, because often, say with potatoes, there's so much ground cultivation that needs to happen, because the harvester needs no clods. It needs lovely soil that it just comes up, and it makes for easy harvesting. You don't have to have a lot of people in the back of the harvester. So what happens is we go, okay, well, this is the harvester that we use. And then we work back and go, well, this is how we have to actually work our soil to plant the crop so that we can harvest it. So there is this massive system change, this massive paradigm of shifting of how we think needs to happen if we are going to change the way vegetable production is is done. And don't get me wrong, like there are lots of things that are starting to happen. It's this remembering where people are at and where I'm at. So, you know, like I would like to see so much more change, but just the small step, I have to keep reminding me the small steps, anything is positive. So.
And I think we have to make sure that we know that there's infinite possibilities. We can't just, like, it could be quite easy to say, oh, damn, it's a systems change. We can't do anything about that. Yeah. But my next podcast guest, I'll share an example, is Jacob Wolke. And he wanted to open a butchery. He had his own meat in his own market garden, and he wanted to take it to the retail sector. But he wasn't big enough to actually employ a salesperson, like someone to man the store. Yeah. So he actually created a store that has a login that people go in. It's not manned, and they pay by credit card. There's a whole video system there, and then they leave. And in 2 years, however long it's been operating, he's never had anyone steal anything. And he has this operating butcher store that has no staff, so he doesn't have to pay them. Yeah. So, you know, it's really, I was like, how did you think of that?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what we need. We need really creative thinking, don't we?
Yeah, and that's absolutely creative thinking. And like we're so used to working in our box of how things are done. And, you know, my grandfather did it like that. My father did it like that. So it has to be done like this. But we really need to peek over the side of, or completely jump outside of our box and actually go and look at all the other different possibilities that are out there, because there are so many things in different industries, different places that you can bring inspiration from. One of Nuffield's sayings is, you know, inspiration comes from the least expected places. So listen with open minds and watch with open eyes what you're looking at, because you just never know what can be brought into your farm or your life. Or yeah, and I say, you talk about creativity too. Like, I think that's a really important bit to bring into our farm as well, or into our life, because we are very quite creative when we're children, but it sort of gets squashed out of us, like we stop being creative. And I really try and, well, I would like to bring into my work, because I've got a fair creative streak in me as well, love taking photos, how we can actually bring and re-engage that creativity, which is within us but has been squashed, so that helps us to come up with all of these new and exciting things that we could be doing on our farm. Like what Jacob's created is amazing. If he was very stuck in his box, he could have gone, oh, well, I just can't do that. So I won't do that and be all in dumps about my farm can't, where am I going to sell everything? Where he's been able to go get creative and create a solution to.
Yeah, he could have just used the systems that were there. So maybe going to markets, which wouldn't have made him be as successful as what he is now. He wouldn't have had such a big market, people consistently buying. That also makes me think of a workshop that we did in WA. And often farmers will bring their kids along who are there homeschooling, but they're quite agriculturally minded, you know, farm kids. And we talk about what the next generation of farming looks like. And those kids say, you know, like I say to them, what do you need for this next generation of farming? Because the parents will say, yeah, we need to be more sustainable. We need to be more profitable. We need to, you know, increase the health of our land. And I say to the kids, what do you need to do this? And they say, let us be creative.
No, really? Yeah.
I just remember that one workshop, they were like, let us be creative. And I thought that was just so beautiful.
Yeah, that is so right. And be creative to change the systems and allow things to be different, so that the farm or soil can be farmed for a living soil, so it stays alive and supports us long into the future. Yeah.
Going back to the cropping, I feel like the actual hands-on stuff is a little bit boring rather than dreaming about these big things, but they are hands-on stuff that we need to work through. Yeah. Multi-species crop, you've used it as a break crop, and you're going into a cash crop.
Yep.
There's a couple of options of how you can terminate that crop. What is the main option that people are using in Tasmania?
I'd say still probably the main option is with chemical application to take it out at a point when it's not too big. We can still deal with it. If you have got livestock, like it is using the livestock to take it down. And there has been a few experiments done with a crimper roller. We're still not completely convinced that that's the way to go. But there's methods. I think also using like cultivation is a method to actually end that crop as well. Yeah.
What made you want to apply for a Nuffield Scholarship?
So I've had a long time at Botanical Resources Australia growing pyrethrum. I've been a pyrethrum production agronomist with them for 10 years. What made me want to apply for my Nuffield Scholarship? So I love pyrethrum. It was so much part of my life, but it was starting to get so sick. And the answer was always another chemical or another synthetic that we could use to actually help it get over its sickness. And me having sort of come into or understanding of human health, and we can actually heal ourselves through good nutrition. I'm like, well, why can't we do this for the plants? Like, surely we can give the plants some better nutrition, maybe grow them in healthier soil so they can get everything they need to create their own immunity. And it just wasn't something that was on the radar at all. And I thought doing a course with Jane Slattery on nutritional farming, I'm like, yep, okay, soil is the answer. We can work through this. We can grow healthier plants. And I decided that doing a Nuffield would be an amazing way to have a look what was happening around the world, how people were bringing the regenerative principles into their farms so that they were reducing their synthetic inputs. And it was really, so it was a means for me to help an industry or help me to stay in agriculture, because I love farming, I love agriculture, but I couldn't continue working in a way where you are applying a lot of chemicals, a lot of fertilizer, a lot of cultivation. And I could see that if we could improve the health of our soil, start supporting that we could grow healthier plants and we wouldn't have to be using as much chemical. And I sort of just had little tiny glimpses that the farmers were really quite enjoying this new way of farming. Like, I mean, it's still very much old, goes back to our great grandfathers and how they farmed, but bringing it back to the present now. And I was sort of getting a little bit disengaged. I could see a lot of the farmers that were getting disengaged as well. I'm like, well, this could be a really exciting way to keep us all in farming and keep us farming long into the future and growing good, healthy plants and good food.
When you went to the Nuffield Scholarship, when you went travelling, you probably didn't visit large organisations that were in that system. You would have went to family farmers that were making their own decisions, that were using their own equipment and could really control or make their own choices about how they farmed. Would that be correct?
Yeah, that really was correct. And that was one of my biggest probably take homes from all of this was it's about a change within the person. And when you've got full control over your farm and where you're supplying your end products, then you can make that change. But when you're reliant on companies and industry where you're supplying your product, it becomes very hard to make the changes. You may want to change, you may make changes, but there's other powers to be that are dictating how you're actually farming. I did find a few bigger organisations, Barfoot's in the UK and G's, which they probably were bigger family companies that had got quite big, but they'd made decisions that they wanted to change. how they were producing their food. They wanted their farms to be productive long into the future, like their great-grandchildren could still be farming it. So they had made a conscious decision, or at the higher end of the business, which was then filtering through down onto the farm, where a lot of the family-owned farms and a bit more in control of where they sell, they could make that decisions, like it was ground up decisions, which was moving forward. And then just starting to glimpse into like the enterprise stacking and working different ways of actually being able to sell your food. That wasn't really on my radar at that point, but it was a really, really exciting part that I saw. And I was like, oh, this is really cool. And it's only now coming into my work now, the enterprise stacking and how important it is to get creative and get different methods of being able to sell, or markets to sell our produce.
Have you got some sort of, I know early stages, but any examples of what you might be thinking of that might work in that enterprise stacking on some of the farms that you help with?
It's just looking at, I think, different markets. Just say, so we're growing multi-species crops together, and you can get docked by putting in impurities into the silos. So is there markets that we could be looking at? Are there dairy farmers that might actually need those mixed grains that don't need to be cleaned, that you could just sell straight to them rather than having to just say deliver your wheat? And so it's that different, creating different markets. And also maybe one example I saw, and it's starting to sort of be just talked about, is like having your seed grading or a seed cleaner, so you can actually clean out your different lines, and being able to actually bring that onto the farm might be like, and set up yourself a little hub, and other people that are wanting to farm in this way could maybe use your seed cleaner that allows it to be cleaned out. And then the Axtons in Canada, like at the point when I was there, like everything was being so clean, it was actually straight away suitable for human consumption. So they were selling their grains directly for people to eat, and making flour. And I think it's just really exciting that, as you said before, infinite possibility out there of what you can actually bring to the farm. And just by bringing in the cover crops, there is the need for livestock to come in, which then provides another income stream. And then if you have got diversity starting to build on the farm, like bees is always a good example. Like the bees can come in for pollination and also honey production.
And even just what you're taking out, because you're putting that diversity in there. So there was, you wrote in your paper about a canola crop that had a companion crop like faba beans or lentils or fenugreek, and it eliminated the need for insecticides, where there was a canola crop that it didn't have any diversity with it. It was just a monoculture of canola, and it had 7 insecticide applications.
Yeah, isn't that, it's just amazing. It's that change in thinking. Okay, well, if we put in diversity, and that plants are obviously healthier, but then also the insects couldn't determine, like they're flying over and couldn't determine that it was a canola crop. So they're just continuing on to go to a monoculture canola crop.
Yeah, so that creativity and putting in those multi-species, reducing the need for insecticide, I guess the barrier is, will the canola harvest as high? And I had this conversation with a WA farmer yesterday. He came here for lunch with his wife. It was wonderful. And he was saying, I need to get my yield up. And I was like, okay, why? I'm sure you do, if you're saying you do, but let's go through why. And it came into that othering. So he was profitable. He was using less fertilizer, and his topsoil had built. His root systems had gotten deeper. His lupins had way more nodulation on them, and I was like, well, what else are you chasing? And he was like, yeah, I'm happy. I really had to challenge him to realize that he was happy. And his wife said, yeah, we're happy.
Yeah.
So we just that yield, it's such a mindset thing. It's more profit, it's more happiness, it's more seeing you achieve what your goals and visions are. And of course, I'm not going to say that there's people that have a budget and that have to make certain yields. I get that. But it's choices that you've made to get you there sometimes, or maybe choices that other family members have made to get you there. So people are certainly in a box that they can't get out of. I totally get that, and I'm putting no judgment on that. But if you're in a position where you're regenerating your soil, you're getting diversity in, and you're profitable, you've got to stop back and go, wow, look what I'm achieving.
Yeah, and I think that's important too, to have maybe an outsider actually come to you and say, or sort of, as you said, challenge the thinking of, well, why do you need to have more yield? And I was on a farm visit with a person, and all he talked about was all the problems and all the things that weren't going right on the farm. And I said, all I've heard today is problems. Is there actually anything going right on your farm? Because I can see lots of things going right. And he's like, okay. So just by me being able to go, hang on a minute, pull him up and challenging him on that, he then go, okay, well, the cows are really healthy. They're enjoying their diverse pastures. And he was able to actually start to list off and think about some positives that were happening on the farm. So it's often someone just with completely new eyes that just needs to come in and help you see something different.
If someone's energy level is low, then what they're going to be seeing is lower than what they could be seeing. It's got a lot to do with energy. And energy is not only just the food that you eat or the sleep that you get. Energy is how you think. You can actually change the way you think about something. And then you can enjoy what you're farming more, and things come to you more. Manifestation, doesn't it? This does lead us into
I was just going to say also there that whole mind, like, you know, if we're really negative about weeds and we hate thistles, all we see is all the thistles. It's been a really interesting transition that I've seen in me, because I'm used to, we want beautiful straight rows of plants, no weeds, lovely and clean. It used to look amazing to me. It still does look pretty cool in an artistic way. And it was only halfway or 3/4 of the way through last year, and I was like looking at pastures and looking at crops. And normally, you know, as a cover grass crop, we would go, okay, we need to spray it out. There's too many weeds in there because we're going to put in our poppies, or we're going to put in something next, and we don't want them to build up. And I just looked at this grass and I was like, wow, look at that pasture and look at that diversity. That is so cool. Where before I would have gone, oh, look, that's so messy and that's so weedy, we need to spray it. How our eyes of what we're observing or what we're taking note of changes the way that we're looking at things, because I'm now looking for lots of diversity, lots of plants, and that brings me complete happiness, and I know the system's starting to work. Where before I was like, oh, weeds are bad, we don't want to see weeds. So I was just looking for monoculture. So it's just what we focus on is really important. And what we focus on, we get more of. So let's focus on the positive rather than the weeds or the things that are really annoying us.
And if you think of what's the positive of bare soil, like really, what is the positive of bare soil?
Well, in our paradigm that we work, there is no benefit whatsoever. Where in people's minds that are trying to conserve energy and moisture, I mean, it's a great thing. So
no food for the microbes, the heat that builds up, you can't regenerate your soil, all of your your secondary metabolites and proteins just totally denature. So there's no life left in that soil.
Yeah.
So then our big challenge is, how do we make sure that those weeds are not in our cash crop? Am I concentrating on something I shouldn't be? Yeah, good.
Yeah,
good call.
So and it's also that whole thought, we're so focused on the disease, like as an agronomist or as farmers, all we're going out into the crop is we're going to look for disease. We're going to go and see what our problem is and see whether we need to spray. When do we actually ever just go out there and look at how healthy things are? And how good our crop is going. We've always got this mindset of we're going to check for something. So let's go with the mindset of we're going to look at our healthy plants, the positivity of growth, rather than death, I suppose. Yeah, interesting.
It does. So this is leading me into, you've done a lot of work with Jane Slattery from Natural Intelligence Farming. You've basically been working alongside her for quite a while. I'm pretty aware you've been running some workshops, being like that co-person for Jane, and potentially breaking out and doing some on your own. Tell me what that work is and what are your plans for that work? Is it too early to ask?
Yeah, it's amazing. It's really hard to explain what that work is, but it's been a massive journey for me. And I think the work is actually, it's understanding you at the core and what you are or who you are, and peeling away all of those fears that are holding us back in life, I suppose. And if we're fearful about weeds and, fearful that if we don't put that spray on, we are going to lose our crop. That is our full belief. That's our fear. So it's going to happen because we're in a way sort of manifesting that to happen, because we know if we don't put that chemical on, we'll lose our crop. Where if we've got the belief or that thought that my crop doesn't need a fungicide, it's more than okay, I know it's healthy, I know it's fine. And that, we don't, the fear's not there. We're more looking at the life, we're looking at how well the plant is growing. Then the likelihood of needing a fungicide is really low, because our thoughts are that our crop is fine. So it's just really, really special work, I would say. And my life is completely changed through working with Jane, and Jane helping to see who I am and to help me remove a lot of those fears, and to live in the present day, not be worrying about the future and not bringing the past into today, which makes a massive difference to life. And has just helped me, because was a workaholic, probably still am a workaholic, but I was probably working to prove my worth, and I am a good person, all those sorts of things. But now it's just, I'm working because I've got a vision, and I've got a mission of, I want to help farmers to transition to this, from an artificial to a biological natural system, and to help us be more free and let life just flow. I don't know what I'm saying, Nicola. It's really hard.
I love all of those words, especially that word free.
Yeah.
Fear and free, they're like the two opposites, aren't they?
Yeah. And that's what I really feel, that once we can, and I'll talk for me, once I've been able to remove, and don't get me wrong, there's still so much more to go, but once you can take those layers of fear away, life does become more free, and more things flow, and it feels the right things actually come along, because we're a bit more open to the infinite possibilities. We're not stuck in our boxes of how we have to be and who we are. It's just, okay, what's best for me now? And it seems to just all happen and fall into place. So, and how am I going to bring this into my work. It's really interesting. I keep a bit of a business idea book or like ideas, and I have for a long time. And I've done a lot of personal work, development work in the past, and I've understood that getting your vision, getting your why, having goals, just understanding yourself actually makes life a little bit easier. It helps making those decisions. And so I've wanted to include people in my work. I've wanted to include creativity. I've wanted to include good food, and I've wanted to include farming. And I've never known how that all can work together. And for some reason, somehow finding Jane and natural intelligence farming has somehow or other, all works back together again. So it's really nice to now know that I can bring the people working together, because I'm actually realizing that the people is number one in this journey. We really, to understand ourselves, break through our fears, because a lot of what we're doing on our farm is actually deep in ground fears that are holding us back and stopping the energy from flowing. And then to be able to bring in farming, to bring in nature, and if we can farm in a more natural way, then we are producing great food, which allows us to be healthy, and it becomes this one big cycle, which is really cool that it all come together.
There's two strong forces, and I think those strong forces are nature and people. Like out of everything that can affect the outcome in this world, nature and people, I keep thinking. So people can control nature, but all of a sudden it's going to come back and it's going to bite you in the butt.
Yeah.
So I think that we've tricked ourselves that we are more important, our decisions are more important, that we can control it. And then we've got to a point where in this system we can't get out of it, even though we know, oh damn, nature is coming back to bite us in the butt, and we don't know how to get out of it. And then we're in fear mode. And what you're saying is that we need to get away from fear and into freedom. Yeah. And I still see this system change being a big thing that we need to just keep concentrating on.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also, we need to understand that we are part of nature, like we're not separate to nature. And so we are very important in that ecosystem, and how we are, where our minds are at. And if we're trying to control nature, then we're disrupting how it all works. So we have to actually get to a point where we understand we are nature.
I guess we become fertility for the food for our future generations, because we die and we go to the land and we become fertility. So we are absolutely part of the land. Yeah,
and how we are responding and thinking that, dictate that this paddock needs to have this crop and we need to do this and we need to do that. It's almost saying that we're better than nature and we don't know. That nature doesn't know how to do all of this. If we can actually start to see ourselves as part of all of it, and work more in with nature, then it's all just going to flow so much better. And it does come back to us having to come back into our true self, into our heart, and the heart of who we really are, rather than being controlled by our head. And that is just so powerful. And being science trained, loving maths, loving everything about, I suppose, procedures and that sort of thing, it's quite hard to let go of that programming and that training. But we need to do that. We need to turn our heads off and go back to our heart and what our gut instinct is telling us that is most important for us to be doing right at this point in time.
Beautiful. Well, Robin, that has been the most amazing conversation. I know when we end our Fridays talking or start our Mondays talking, we know it starts and ends really lovely. So thank you so much for being on the podcast today. If people want to get in contact with you, you don't have a website. How do people find you?
Most people have been finding me through Instagram. So if you look up Robin_Tait. You'll find me on Instagram and send me a message through there. If you're meant to find me, you'll find me. But also looking at, if you look on the Nuffield website, if you search me, you'll have my contact details are there as well. So yeah. Or contact NutriSoil. You've got my number, and people can get me through that. So yeah.
And it's not just Tasmania you work, you're happy to do Zooms with people. I know it's not as effective, but if someone was in Victoria you have
absolutely.
done work in Victoria.
Yeah, I'm absolutely happy to do Zoom calls with anybody, and putting cover crop mixes together. It's really important to go through what your goal is and then tailor that cover crop mix to what you want. And also, as I move into more of the natural intelligence farming, there might be just some work with you as a person, or you might feel like you resonate with me and want to have a chat, and so there's that work as well. And sometimes I'm in Victoria or other places and I can do on the ground visits, but let's start with Zoom for mainland visits. So
Well, I'm really excited for where your business is going to go and the opportunity that people have to be in contact with you and to learn these things from you. So wonderful. Thank you so much for being in agriculture, Robin.
Thank you very much, Nicola. That was great.
All right. See you.
Bye.
Please follow the Biological Farming Roundtable podcast. Share it with your friends and networks. I'm Nicola Maddock and I work at NutriSoil, a liquid biological fertiliser made from a big worm farm whose purpose is to empower farmers to produce life-enriching food.